today, I kind of just like turned my head and I saw on the news one massive headline that just really, really stunned me. I was not prepared at all. I was eating lunch. I had to put my food down and then go like this and stare intently at the screen because on the television it said that the GOP has settled on the Speaker of the House. And not only that, but it was a unanimous decision. So Mike Johnson, who was from Louisiana, he's a Republican, ended up winning the Republican nomination to become the Speaker of the House, and he won the vote unanimously, which is kind of crazy. Now, many of you guys may not know who he is, and it seems like that's part of why he actually was able to win the speakership. Politico does note, other than his conservative reputation and leading role in challenging the 2020 elections, most senators have had little or no personal contact with Johnson. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said he's never met the Louisianan, sorry. And Majority Leader Chuck Schumer does not know him at all, according to the New Yorker's office. Instead of a powerhouse fundraiser like McCarthy or a pugnacious wrestler like Jordan, the House's first evangelical speaker takes the job as a policy-minded ideological purist. He's known to carry a copy of the Constitution and harbors big dreams on spending cuts and social issues that don't stand a chance in the Democratic-controlled Senate. Now, to me, that sounds great. That sounds like a dream because, I was actually thinking that, Kevin McCarthy, he was not the most conservative person in the world. He's not, the most conservative person even in the GOP. But, he was conservative enough, I think, that the House could have picked literally anyone who was as conservative as Kevin McCarthy without the same amount of baggage, and he would have been accepted. This is why I think like Steve Scalise, for example, had a really good shot at becoming Speaker of the House. But, yeah, the biggest problem was the baggage. Like, many people say, Matt Gaetz is doing just out of grievance, right? Because he hates Kevin McCarthy. Well, it is kind of a personal thing against Kevin McCarthy, but it's not because Matt Gaetz hates him. It's because Kevin McCarthy didn't keep his word. So you pick someone who's just as conservative, and you get someone who is just more trustworthy, and it's all good. It's all fine and dandy. Well, Kevin McCarthy has a Liberty Score rating from the Conservative Review of about like 50 or so. Mike Johnson has a Liberty Score of about 75 or so. And if that seems low, right, it's a C rating, just checking, the charts of who was the most conservative people in Congress as of like 2018, or at least who started in 2018. And Mike Johnson is actually, kind of in the middle of the first page out of like 6. So he's actually pretty conservative. As they noted, he was leading the charge to overturn the results of the 2020 election. A strong Trump supporter. But he also votes on, with the conservatives on most issues. See here, not supporting gun control. Not trying to pass this like rush contraception bill. Apparently it's a rush contraception bill. Not supporting a lame duck spending bill. These types of things. Right? Like not wanting to codify same-sex marriage. These are all normal conservative things that, most Republicans, most conservatives should be supporting if they're true conservatives. So as far as people who would, be worried as to whether or not, Mike Johnson is going to be conservative enough, is going to be a good enough Speaker of the House, I think the answers to both of those questions are most certainly yes. Now, the previous Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, had to cut special deals with like Matt Gaetz and the Freedom Caucus, and that might have people wondering, well, did the same concessions apply to Mike Johnson? Well, the answer is yes, but they might not last forever. Matt Gaetz himself actually was on MSNBC, and he talked about the whole situation. He explained, the state of the concessions as they stand today and how and why they might change. So I think what would be easier than me explaining all of that to you, it might be a little bit better for you just to hear it from the horse's mouth. I'm not calling him a horse, man. I don't hate him that much. But this is Matt Gaetz while on MSNBC to explain the entire situation.
In studio in Washington. I know it was a busy day on the floor. Thanks for being here.
Welcome to you to Washington. We're glad to have you here.
Here I am. Let's get right to it. What does today's speaker vote mean? And did you cut any side deals this time like we heard about last time?
No side deals. This speaker election means that the House Republican Conference is united. Really, for the first time this Congress, we are united behind a man of deep faith who obeys Almighty God and the Constitution before all else. And
I gotta say, many people were kind of excoriating Matt Gaetz and saying, "Oh no, you're awful for kicking out Kevin McCarthy." I wonder where they are now. I've been refraining from listening to Mark Levin ever since his disastrous takes on Kevin McCarthy kind of culminated in him lambasting the Freedom Caucus members who voted with Matt Gaetz. But are you guys going to say that Mike Johnson is worse than Kevin McCarthy? Kevin McCarthy was like a 55% Liberty rating with the Conservative Review versus Mike Johnson was a 75% rating with the with Conservative Review. Many of you guys were screaming, and now I don't think that you guys are going to be upset at all. Because we ended up getting a better Speaker of the House, which is what we all knew would happen, right? We all knew that we would either get a better Speaker of the House or none at all. I was kind of thinking we would get none at all for several months, but, I guess the GOP got their stuff together and figured, hey, why don't we just get a conservative in here? Like, it's not going to be that bad. And who knows? Maybe Mike Johnson will lead the charge to declare war on Iran so that many of these congressmen's stocks can go up in value.
I was proud to support him. He's not someone who comes from any particular faction of the Republican conference.
I don't know about that.
Well, he has strong relationships from our most moderate members to our most conservative members. And you know what? Everyone feels listened to with Mike Johnson. He has a great tone, a great leadership skill stack, and I'm going to do everything I can to make him successful.
One of the things that you and several Republicans got changed at the beginning of the year was you made it easier to remove a speaker in real time. Then you exercised that authority. So people are seeing a Congress, a set of news cycles here that are because of what you guys did. We're told that continues. So would you be as eager to use that rule to topple this speaker as McCarthy, or this was kind of one and done for you?
That's really, really good, by the way. I am glad that they're keeping in all of the same terms, because I think that it's important to hold the Speaker of the House accountable so that you don't have a situation where, the guy says, "Oh, I promise I'll do these things for you," does only half of it, and then ends up walking away with the bag, leaving you no recourse to hold him accountable or to, perform any act of retribution whatsoever. I think that, more people in the American government need to be held accountable. They do. And if this is one way to do it, then go ahead. I don't care if it starts here. Right? Some people might be like, "Oh, well, don't start here. Start with the president or whatever." Like, it's fine. I'll take it where we can get it. I'm not going to be mad just because this starts here in the House of Representatives. And by the way, the Democrats should do the same thing. The Democrats should do the same thing. If their Speaker of the House isn't doing what he says or she says, then, kick that person out too. Like, I don't like the idea that politicians should just be able to get away with lying. Like, for example, this is why I'm not really, a big fan of Trump in the 2024 election. He said he would drain the swamp. Did he drain the swamp? No, he didn't. And now the swamp is going after him. Now he's running away to and fro, from Florida to New York to Georgia and back and forth into this big old triangle mess, right? With crocodiles nipping at his heels because he refused to drain the swamp. And now he's running on the campaign trail "Oh, we're going to drain the swamp. It'll be better this time. Trust me. Believe me. Believe me." Man, you fooled me once. You want me to be fooled again? Come on, bro. And then similarly, I think if I were a Democrat, it'd be like Joe Biden. You didn't cure cancer. You didn't cure cancer like you promised. What's up with that? And I would refuse to vote for him as well. You can't make empty promises. Right? Don't promise me milk and cookies and then only give me milk and then expect me to support you again. Right? If you're only going to give me milk, just give me milk. Right? You don't need to lie Right? Because the person who wins my long-term support is not going to be the person who promised the most. It's going to be the person who was the most honest and also gave me what I wanted.
Change at the beginning of the year was you made it easier to remove a speaker in real time. Then you exercised that authority. So people are seeing a Congress, a set of news cycles here that are because of what you guys did. We're told that that continues. So will you be as eager to use that rule to topple this speaker as McCarthy, or this was kind of one and done for you?
Well, we have Republicans and Democrats who are interested in raising the threshold for the motion to vacate beyond just one member. And just this morning, I met with Speaker Johnson about that and about those desires. And here's what I've offered. Ro Khanna of California, a Democrat, and I have worked on some bipartisan anti-corruption rule changes for the House.
By the way, I don't think that's going to go anywhere. Also, I think Ro Khanna has like $10,000 or $100,000 in stock for like military weapons companies. So I do find it a bit odd that he's working with Matt Gaetz on this proposal. But this proposal, I don't think has any teeth. We've got too many rhinos who are kind of bought and paid for with big money to accept this type of deal. I do like the idea that he's kind of dangling the carrot of, oh, your seat's more secure, if you support, our proposal. But I just don't see this being successful.
That wouldn't allow members of Congress to become lobbyists or registered foreign agents, that wouldn't allow members of Congress to accept donations from lobbyists and political action committees, and that would stop members of Congress from trading individual stocks. So if we could approach that Khanna-Gaetz anti-corruption agenda with great vigor, then I might be willing to consider an increase in the threshold on the motion to vacate.
So you could raise the threshold, which makes it harder to toss somebody. Do you have any idea whether Mike Johnson is worried that you guys will do this again? I mean, I said one and done because, yes, you could technically do it, but if you keep doing this, right, that's going to complicate a lot of your party's governing agenda.
I do not want your viewers to get the impression that I want to govern by motion to vacate. This was something that we had to do because Kevin McCarthy had lied to us. The one thing that...
Right. There should be no presumption. There should be no presumption that Mike Johnson will need to get thrown out. The only way he gets thrown out is if he lies. That's what happened with Kevin McCarthy. It could happen to Mike Johnson, unless he's trustworthy, which I suspect he might be. But we'll have to see. We got to give him a shot to see.
So it was a McCarthy thing for you?
Well, undeniably, if Kevin McCarthy had maintained his commitments to pursue single-subject spending bills, if he had released the January 6th tapes, if he had called for the votes on a balanced budget amendment and term limits as he had promised, then he would likely still be Speaker today.
By the way, I've heard that every single Speaker of the House who's become the nominee has had to promise that they'll release all the January 6th tapes. This includes Mike Johnson, so I am looking forward to some of those tapes getting released.
It wasn't about the man so much as his unwillingness to adhere to the agreement that he had made.
Well, we keep it real around here, and I appreciate you coming on. It seems sometimes somewhat about the men, because you seem to have beef with him and him with you. It did seem at times to get quite tense. Let me ask you about the funding.
Well, that's not true, though. I want to push back on that because I can cite specific things that Kevin McCarthy agreed to do. And the reason I brought this motion to vacate is when I went home to my constituents, they looked at me and said, Matt, you promised us a term limit vote. You promised us a balanced budget vote. He's not doing these things. And you said there was a one-person motion to vacate. So it was really accountability for policy and...
And that's really, really good. Like, it's great that Matt Gaetz is being held accountable to his constituents for, not getting what he was elected in part to do. Like, his voters were like, hey, you had gotten these concessions, but you haven't gotten the results yet. Why not? Like, that's really, really good. And I wish that more politicians were being held accountable in this way.
Procedure failures more than was any beef.
We have informed viewers, and they've lived through it and watched it all, so they can adjust and assess what you're saying based on what they saw, because we saw that. But I do want to get you while I have you on. One of the things that you all said was bad was that you said Kevin McCarthy was working with Democrats or doing so in the wrong way. Let me show you. Take a look.
Working with the Democrats is a yellow brick road that has been paved by Speaker McCarthy.
The Speaker fought through 15 votes in January to become Speaker, but was only willing to fight through one failed CR before surrendering to the Democrats.
The only time that we lost the conservative agenda was when Kevin McCarthy went behind the Republican conference and was able to retain a majority of Democrat votes.
You and others said that. And yet, this is the question I've been dying to ask you. I haven't seen you in person since this all went down. Look at this chart. Congressman Gaetz, you were in the minority. You partnered with over 200 Democrats to oust Kevin McCarthy. And so the question to you, and this is not a left or right question, as you know, there are conservatives and Republicans who've raised this issue with you in this recent time. Why is it bad when Kevin McCarthy partners with Democrats to keep the government open, but it's okay when you do it to actually shut down basically a functioning House for a few weeks?
Also, I would say I think it's a bit disingenuous to kind of frame this as Matt Gaetz working with the Democrats, because it's more like the Democrats working with Matt Gaetz. Democrats weren't trying to get this dude kicked out, and Matt Gaetz was like, hey, let me work with you. It wasn't like Matt Gaetz went to the Democrats to say, hey, can you help me kick out Kevin McCarthy? Because, you know, I really think that you would want to kick him out since you've worked with him on so many backroom shady deals, right, that, like, you really won't want him in here anymore. Like, I don't think that Matt Gaetz had any control over whether or not the Democrats would vote for McCarthy or against McCarthy. I think the Democrats wanted to vote out McCarthy independently, just in an effort to make the GOP look bad. So I don't think that this is really an accusation against Matt Gaetz that's going to stick, because as far as we understand it, he didn't work with the Democrats. The Democrats just voted the way that they wanted to. It doesn't mean that, Matt Gaetz and the Democrats are in cahoots to get rid of McCarthy. That is just, I think, a bizarre theory that doesn't really hold much if you hold it under the least bit of scrutiny.
Well, we shut down for 22 days. Keep in mind, every year, Congress takes a 6-week vacation. So we took about half the time of the normal vacation, and I actually think it was some of our more productive
And you couldn't have done it without those 200 Democrats. You couldn't have done it without working with Democrats, right?
Yeah, and by the way, I work with Democrats regularly, whether it's on privacy rights, on FISA issues, whether it's on criminal justice reform.
But I just showed you saying that was a yellow brick road paved by McCarthy.
Right,
you say that was wrong.
Well, that was a tight clip.
There it is.
Yeah.
And I'll give you the mic back.
Sure.
Our viewers, they don't always hear directly from you. They see, coverage of you. Explain to us in logical English why it's bad when he does it and okay when you do it.
Well, I had to work with Democrats to remove McCarthy because he worked with Democrats to violate the agreements he had made with us. Had Democrats or had McCarthy not worked with Democrats on the debt limit deal in violation of the guardrails we had set up, certainly I wouldn't have worked with Democrats to remove him. But it's not, I think we're being a bit reductive here. It's okay to work with Democrats in divided government. It's actually necessary and required if you want to do the essential functions of government. What's not okay is for Kevin McCarthy to blow through the guardrails we set.
So it sounds like what he's saying is working with the Democrats and compromising with them is fine. The problem is scheming with them against the Republicans, and that makes sense.
For example, we told him that he was authorized to negotiate a debt limit deal that was to a certain date or a certain dollar amount, whichever came first. He then blew through those guardrails to just suspend the debt limit entirely until January of 2025. We've already accrued $2 additional trillion in debt.
Right. So you're saying, look, people can assess that, like I said, for themselves. You're saying that that was the enforcement against deals you'd already made. I'm running out on time here, but finally, big picture, take it all together. Did Matt Gaetz and the rebels win because you got the speaker you wanted and now you don't have to vacate or play those strategies anymore? Or are Matt Gaetz and the so-called rebels still out here and Johnson should be just as worried over his shoulder as McCarthy?
It's the former. We are here to make Mike Johnson as successful as a speaker as he can possibly be. He has sat next to me for 7 years on the House Judiciary Committee. We served together on House Armed Services. We have very aligned perspectives on a vast majority of issues. So this is our guy. This isn't a guy that we're going to chase around with a motion to vacate. This is a guy we're going to do everything we can to pour into and make successful.
Gave you time.
Yeah.
I want to
makes sense.
Mention for viewers.
Again, the default should not be that, he's gonna kick him out on a moment's notice. No. The onus is not on Matt Gaetz to decide that he doesn't want to kick out Mike Johnson. The onus is on Mike Johnson to deliver on his promises, and we have no indication that he won't deliver on those.
It's your guy. which is different from how we started the interview, which he said he's everybody's guy, he's across the board, but now he's your side's
Well,
your team's guy.
look, he can be our guy and he can be the guy for other folks. Everybody voted for him, but I think people can be enthusiastic about Mike Johnson for different reasons. Yeah. I'm very enthusiastic about him being an honest man, a true conservative. I think others that might not hold his perspective on some of those policy questions really like his leadership style.
Well, I thank you for coming in. When it comes to the speaker news, you have been a big part of it and been in the news. I appreciate you coming on the beat tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Congressman Matt Gaetz.
Very cool. An actually good interview that really did not suck at all. You know, good job, MSNBC, for actually doing a good job with that interview. But yeah, it seems like Mike Johnson is actually going to be a good Speaker of the House. We'll have to see. We have to give him, some more days to put some policies in place. Be interesting to see if he leads some sort of call to declare war against Iran with everything going on in Israel and Palestine. But this seems like a good choice. I'm happy with this choice. I always thought that this whole fiasco would lead to us either having a better Speaker of the House or no Speaker of the House at all. And it seems like we got one of those results today. So I'm excited about it. I'm pretty happy, but I'm looking forward to seeing what happens, because politicians are very rarely as good as they say they will be. So I'm not expecting Mike Johnson to be perfect, but I am expecting him to be better than Kevin McCarthy, which, granted, it's a pretty low bar. But all that to say, I do have above ocean level hopes for this man.